I'm excited to see you.
I'm going to be incognito.
No, you can't be incognito when you're part of this family. It just doesn't happen. Today, I want to thank you for something. You helped me recapture something this morning that I didn't realize that I'd lost. It is so easy whenever we sing worship songs to be taken in by the song and to just sing the words. You did something this morning that I really didn't know that I had lost. You helped me focus on my worship this morning whenever I was worshiping. And the song choices, man, it just made me focus my worship that much more. And it went from being a song service, worship service, to like just me and God. And I was so thankful for you this morning for your devotion. This morning, as we are going to be digging into God's Word, very first thing I want to bring up an announcement to you, something that's very important to us as a community. And I want to invite you guys to be a part of that tonight at 7 p.m. It's at the stadium, the football stadium. And one of the main reasons I really want you to be there is because I need you to be there in my place. Because I'm bivocational and it is tax-free weekend, I am unable to be there. And I have to go to work, and Randy is going to be standing in my place. But our church has been requested to pray over Roderick Elementary. And at the end of the day, remember what I told you guys. It's one church. All the churches in this community, it's one church. And the opportunity that is afforded to us to be able to go and pray, I really hope you guys will go in my place for me and to be there for us. The reason why I'm bringing all that up too is because there is not a chance. There is not a chance anybody has without a whole lot of prayer to be brought to Jesus. It's going to take faith. Yes, it's going to take the relationship. But everybody that's ever been brought to the Lord, somebody else prayed for them. And whenever we're living in a time where what we live in, where there's so many things, it's just not fair anymore. The things that kids are having to deal with in school is not fair. And they're having to grow up so fast, and they're not able to be kids. They're not able to develop the way they need to. They're being rushed into it, and we need to pray for our schools. We need to pray for our administrators. So with that, I really invite you guys to join tonight together, all the body of Christ. But today, we're going to be in Nehemiah chapter 6. We have been in a study in Nehemiah about increasing in faith and enriching SC3 community. And simply what that means is we are on a mission, we are on a goal, a pursuit to make sure that we are all being transformed into Jesus. It is our goal not just to come and attend and get a good worship service. It's not our goal to come and that our kids have a growth opportunity. We want to be transformed. The book of Nehemiah was written about a time where Jerusalem had been destroyed and he was rebuilding a wall. So why would we be studying about Nehemiah whenever we are not in any kind of a rebuild? It's always a great opportunity to build and fortify your walls and to build and fortify what God is trying to do in our hearts. And about enriching SC3 community, it's about being better together than we ever were apart. Is that life is just not the same. I told Tony and Joni this morning when I saw them, I said, when I don't see you, I miss you. And whenever we're not together, part of me is missing. Even if I'm the one that's missing. So as we're looking at this today, we're going to be looking at a time where courage is going to be really needed. I saw this quote this morning, and it is so profound. And I want to share it with you. This is by Dorothy Bernard. Courage is fear that said its prayers. Courage is fear that said its prayers. I don't know about you guys, but it takes a lot of courage to do the right thing over and over and over again. We are looking at a time, especially in this portion of Nehemiah, where we're looking at Nehemiah's leadership. But I want to remind you, is that although we are looking at a time of Nehemiah's leadership, and although you may not be a leader of any said ministry in our church, you're a leader among us because we are servants together. We lead one another. Can you think of a time, and we're in Nehemiah chapter 6, verse 1, but can you think of a time where you have had some sort of a task some sort of an assignment or a project, and it's not just one that was assigned to you at work. I mean, Randy, how many tickets do you probably get a week? Here lately a lot? And how quickly are you just ready to just push them aside and never see them again? Okay. Yeah. He has his after Labor Day pile. Those tickets aren't done yet, but they're the after Labor Day pile. But the project I'm talking about is one that you believed in, one that you felt called to. Today, guys, I want to show you, if you're taking notes up on the screen, the very first thing I want to show you is you need to understand this right here. Because in this book, in this study, we're talking about walls, and we're talking about a guy named Nehemiah, but you need to understand something. If you can wrap your head around this, everything else is going to make so much more sense. See, the enemy's opposition was not the wall. The wall was merely the object. The enemy's opposition was against Nehemiah's obedience to God. And this is important whenever I'm talking about this project and things that you got to do. Because what we're talking about here is this task that you've been called to do. This thing that you've been called to do. And it's like every time you turn around, there's another diversion, another obstacle, another thing that stands in the way. You know, a diversion is a very dangerous thing because it's like this dangerous trap that you can give into if you're not careful. And Nehemiah, he was no newcomer to opposition and diversions. The local church itself, we're not new to opposition. We're not new to diversions. But a question still remains, a question we cannot say that Nehemiah did. Nehemiah seemed to always be one step ahead. How many of you guys are tired of always feeling like you're 2 steps behind your problem? How many times as a church do we feel like we're behind the problem of what's going on? And we're not talking about something as small as this or as big as something else. How do we do it, though? How do we stay a step ahead the way that Nehemiah did? Well, I've been rereading over Nehemiah, and something just kind of stands out about him. And I believe, if you'll hold fast to this part right here, you'll be able to get a step ahead. As a church, as an individual, we need to recall our purpose and we need to stay committed to that purpose. You need to recall your purpose and you need to stay committed to that purpose. Our job is not to be the biggest church that has ever existed in Josephine, Texas. Our job is not even to be the biggest church that's reached the most people ever reached in Josephine. Our job, our purpose, is to be the truly living, walking, breathing picture of Jesus Christ to a world that's hurting. Our job is to not come here for 3 songs and a prayer. Our job is to come here and encourage one another to truly be better. So today, if you're taking notes, I got a few traps I want to share with you about today. And I really hope you guys are dug in because, man, I really feel like we're going to do ourselves a disservice if we don't finish this one today. Okay, there's 3 things. But if you fall asleep on me, I got to end the service early. Okay? So I need you with me today. Okay, so we're going to do a little something I used to do in student ministry all the time. I want you to look at your neighbor and I want you to say, hey. I want you to hold up your fingers like this right here. Okay, I want you to look at your neighbor one more time and say, hey. And I want you to poke your neighbor in the ear to make sure they're awake. Ready, set, go. All right, so here we go. Traps that you need to look at if you're taking notes. The very first one is going to be a trap of peace. Next one's going to be a trap of intimidation. And the last one is going to be a lure of safety. Earlier in Nehemiah, he had experienced something that all of us have experienced. He experienced threats and gossips. But let's look at verse 2 with me real quickly. Caleb, if you would bring that up on the screen. Verse 1 and 2, yeah. All right. So now when Sanballat and Tobiah and Geshem, the Arab, and the rest of our enemies heard that I had built the wall and that there was no breach left in it, although up to that time I had not set up the doors and the gates. Sanballat and Geshem sent to me saying, come, let us meet together at Hakkephirim and the plain of Ono. But they intended to do me harm. All right, we'll stop right there. I want to call you back to something I told you at the beginning of the sermon. Remember, I told you, I said the enemy's opposition is not to the wall, it's to Nehemiah's obedience. What does that mean for you? It means this right here. Listen, I want you to hear me about this. See, the only way that we'll ever understand this is if we get the correct vision. The only way to get the correct vision is if you can understand really what's going on. Listen, Satan doesn't hate your belief in God. He hates your obedience. Satan doesn't hate that we are meeting here as a church. He hates that we're trying to strive for this spiritual change. Satan doesn't even hate that we serve. He doesn't hate that we do community service. He doesn't hate that we are at the back to school bash. You know what he hates? He hates that we are there trying to share the love of Christ. You need to understand where the opposition lies and what it's all about. And Nehemiah, up until this point, he had not fallen to threats of gossip and things like that. So it was time for some traps, and it was time for like a peace conference of sorts. You know, this is a common desire. Do we not all want peace? Do we not all want to get along? Yes, some of us are really kind of psycho in the head, and we're like, yeah, I like the confrontation. You're lying. You're lying. Nobody wants to have a life of strife. Nobody wants to have a life of problems. But for there to be peace, Nehemiah was going to have to pause in his obedience. You need to hear this part. For there to be peace, according to the terms that Sanballat and Tobiah wanted, Nehemiah was going to have to pause in his obedience to pursue their approval. Because they were calling him to come out here for this peace thing. It was something that was not going to help him fulfill the task. Remember what I was telling you at the beginning is you got this task that you feel called to do, this purpose, and every step of the way is like somebody's trying to pull you away. We got to remember at times is like, yes, prioritizing and things like that. But Nehemiah, he had this wall to be built, and it was a good excuse not to set himself up in a trap. You need to understand something. Your relationship with God is a very good excuse to not let yourself get set up in a trap. It's a very good excuse because that's what Satan loves. He loves it. He loves it when Christians, when churches, when we take a pause for peace. Let's consider this, like this past week. How many people probably came to that back to school bash, Andy? Probably 500 to 1,000, probably. So it'd be a good reason for us to celebrate, right? We got to meet and look and even possibly pray with 500 to 1,000 people. It would be a really good time for us if we wanted to pause for peace, that we come in here today and we're like, man, it was a really good week. But this morning I want to call you back to something. The reason we can't look for peace, we can't take our foot off the gas. While I care so much about the 500 we came in contact with, I'm a lot more worried about the 50 that are not here this morning that are our church family. We can't let up for peace. We can't take our foot off the gas. And I know it gets old, it gets tiresome of always living on point, on mission for Christ. Those of you guys who have served in the military, one of the things that we see all the time in the movies, but we know as part of your training and stuff, is that when a military convoy is driving, they don't stop. They keep going. They keep going because if they stop, if they falter, that's when the attack could come. So if we know that this is the proper procedure, this proper channel about not pausing for some sort of a peace, that's where Nehemiah was. He could not afford to stop working on this wall, even though it was finished, even though it was at a place where he could hand it off to someone else. See, it's important for us to remember that when we see Nehemiah's obedience and his continued obedience, guess what it did? It heightened his wisdom. It heightened his discernment. And from that, boldness was born. The more he devoted his relationship with God to obeying him and to digging in with his relationship with God, Nehemiah knew all along his job was not to go to Jerusalem to build his wall. His job was to go to Jerusalem and be obedient to God no matter what that was, no matter what it looked like. As a church, as a believer, if we really want to see boldness happen, we got to be just like Nehemiah. So at least that question, right, is as believers, why do we struggle with a lack of boldness? Why do we struggle with that? Why do we struggle with a lack of boldness? Here's some things I wrote down that I believe could help us if we would just look at Nehemiah. Since the very beginning of the book, we see that Nehemiah's heart was always turned to God, not himself. That's the first thing we got to overcome. Can you say that your heart is always turned on to God? We know by Scripture, we know by history, we know by our nature that's not what we do. Scripture says that for us to feed the Spirit, we got to starve the flesh. So we know that we don't do that. And then, number two, Nehemiah never forgot his purpose. It was not to build a wall. His purpose was not even to unite the people of God. It was about personal obedience. And along the way, God used Nehemiah's personal obedience to bring a people together. So you know what I need from you? And you know what you need from me? We all need each other to personally obey God as much as possible, because there's a lot riding on this. There's a lot riding on it. Our personal obedience. And then next is that wisdom and discernment. They were gifted to him. Because Nehemiah was so faithful, it was gifted to him. The more he obeyed, wisdom and discernment increased, stirring in his heart for boldness. So it wasn't the task that he was devoted to the whole time. Hear me on this, okay? It wasn't the task of the wall that Nehemiah was devoted to. He was devoted to God. You want to know how we're going to increase in faith? Don't be devoted to coming to church on Sunday. Be devoted to God. And when we're here worshiping, then we're going to see all these things, because the enemy, what did they see? All they saw was this wall was being built. And all they saw is that Nehemiah wasn't going to be deterred. But the real wall he was building, the real wall we need to be building, is an entire wall of heartfelt obedience, because that's what he built. You want to know what's going to make our church successful? You want to know what's going to protect our church the most and make things happen is heartfelt obedience. This offer of peace, it would have been enticing, because the biggest part of the task has been complete. You guys ever do that with your tasks at work or things? It's like you prioritize and you get all these things done, and you get down towards the end, you're like, okay, now what was those other things that was trying to deter me? What was those other things that were trying to distract me? And you're like, I'm kind of available now for this thing. See, Nehemiah, he was available at this point for this attractive opportunity for peace. I mean, who doesn't want peace? But you got to understand, the want for peace, that's like a moral stirring. Everybody desires peace. And they were hoping on it. They were counting on it. They were hoping that Nehemiah was going to falter. Which leads us to verse 3 and 4. Look at his response to the peace trap. All right, go ahead, Kev. It says, and I sent messengers to say, I'm doing a great work and I cannot come down. Why should the work stop while I leave it and come down to you? And they sent to me 4 times in this way, and I answered them in the same manner. So immediately when I thought about the 4 times, I thought about all the times that Crystal had to tell me 4 times to do something, and I still don't do it. Anybody else ever guilty of that? Only 4.
That's nice.
I said I still didn't do it. You don't miss it. But no, Nehemiah, what was he doing? He's like, sorry, I got this great task going on right here. How many times have you said, I'm not going to falter my relationship with Jesus, or I'm not going to falter my relationship with the church and our job because I've got this great task going on? Guys, this call that we have with Nehemiah, it's a great task. But right now, we need more people that are saying, what is this task we're after? So here's my question to you, and I don't want you to answer it out loud. Have you really identified what the purpose is for our church, this task? Because if you're thinking that it's a building, you're missing it. If you're thinking that it's about 100% attendance, you're missing it. What's the task that we're after? Guys, we're after transformation. We're after proclamation. We're after the world hearing what's going on at Sabine Creek Community Church because of what we're doing. See, the danger of a peace trap is that when you go to a peace trap, what is the general idea of peace? There's going to be no aggression, right? There's going to be no combat, right? People go to these peace meetings and they come in with a white flag. So obviously, if you're going to a peace meeting, you got to let your guard down. Listen, you never need to let the guard down when your relationship with God in the book of Proverbs, actually, it says, above all else, guard your heart, because from it flows the well springs of life. And Nehemiah was right with that. And here's the problem, is whenever you start trying to seek peace with the world, it's going to make you an enemy of God. Listen, as a church, we don't need to be sitting here trying to come up with all these programs that's going to just attract the world to us. We need to get to the place of where we are standing up for who we are. There are churches, and man, I want to say more right there. There's more things that are going on out there where people are just compromising everything of who we are because we're trying to get people in the seats. Listen, James 4:1-4 says, don't you know that friendship with the world makes you an enemy of God? You want to be attractive to the world? Don't look like them. Be like Jesus. You want us to have an influence in the world? Let's do that. Because on this plain of Ono where they wanted to go, see, no matter where the location was or how neutral it was off task. We need to keep our eyes focused about where we're supposed to be going. See, no matter the proximity of the opportunity that we could come into as a church or this appeal, let's not get off task. The proximity of a back to school bash, if that's in line with the task of where we're going there. But you know what though? With Andy being the leader of the outreach, her, myself, we're praying together so that if something does come up, we're like, this kind of sounds like a good opportunity, but is this in line with where we're wanting to go as a church? We have to be careful because 4 times they asked him. I wrote this down because this is something I still struggle with, and if you're a human being, you still struggle with this too. Your obedience is not tested most at the onset. It's a repetitive loyalty to a vision and a purpose. Your obedience is not tested most at the onset. It's a repetitive loyalty and vision to a purpose. See, our greatest purpose, it's always going to be about faithfulness and obedience to God, love and loyalty to His Word. Just because peace looks wholesome doesn't make it look godly. 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 14 says that Satan himself, he masquerades as an angel of light. Sanballat and Tobiah, they were masquerading. He's like, we just want to have peace with you. All the while, because of his wisdom and discernment, how he was able to recognize it as a trap. So how do we do that, right? How do we recognize that there's some kind of trap of peace or continued purpose, right? How do we know? Well, for one, we have to make sure all of our hearts are turned fully to God. Everybody. It means you need to check on me as much as I check on you. You need to check on me more. I need to check on you more. It is having hearts that turn to God. An overwhelming desire to obedience for love of His Word and prayers for wisdom and discernment, so we may boldly serve. Look at verse 5-7. This is where the traps of intimidation come through. All right, Caleb, go to the next one. In the same way, Sanballat for the 5th time sent his servant to me with an open letter in his hand. In it was written, it is reported among the nations, and Geshem also says it, that you and the Jews intend to rebel, and that is why you are building the wall. And according to these reports, you wish to become their king. And you have also set up prophets to proclaim you, concerning you in Jerusalem. There's a king in Judah, and now the king will hear of these reports. So now come and let us take counsel together. So you get this unsealed letter. Okay? For us in 2025, you have made a Facebook post and you made it public. You want everybody to know exactly how you feel about a subject and about a situation. And for Sanballat, this was like a show of strength. He wanted all the world to know that he was angry. And to the weak-hearted, it felt crushing. I cannot tell you how often and how quickly, whenever we start being attacked, immediately we just want to kind of circle the wagons. We'll circle the wagons, and we want to make sure of any of our weaknesses. But this open letter had a purpose. They were like intentionally calling Nehemiah's leadership into question and stuff about him being this, and Sanballat, he was counting on it. He was counting on this thing about Nehemiah wanting to be threatened. He was counting on the fact that he thought Nehemiah's goal was to build a wall for the people of Jerusalem. All the while, why was Nehemiah there? In obedience to God. Just to make sure you're awake this morning. If you're with me, say yes. Yes. If you're with me, say yes. Yes. All right. Sanballat's tools, though, were more rumors and gossip. You guys ever had that happen to you? You ever had that happen in a church where gossip and rumors are spread about you? And then the way they fortify the rumors, or they qualify them, or even substantiate the rumors, is this person said this over here. I don't know if you're me though. Like most times, if anybody's ever said rumors about me, and they'll say, people are talking, and I'm like, well, tell me who the people are. And they're like, well, I can't tell you that. That's in private. I was like, because I know it's you. I know it's you. Your anonymity is not working. But Sanballat, he hoped. Listen, this is important. He was banking on it. Sanballat was. He was banking on the fears and the trauma of Jerusalem, that when this open letter made it there, that it was going to cause all the people to get in disarray. And if you don't think we're guilty of that as churches today, how often does some rumor start or some problem start that everybody heads for the hills? You want to know why church attendance tanks a lot of times? Is because we listen way too much to problems instead of finding solutions. If a church is not a perfect thing. I mean, I tell people all the time, it really is true. Church is not a country club for saints. It really is a hospital for sinners. And Sanballat, he continually was pushing and accusing Nehemiah of a crusade to become king. I wrote this down. I want to read this to you because I want to get it right. I can say this as a man. I can say this as a husband. I can say this as a father. I can say this as a Christian. And lastly, I can say this as a pastor. And I think you all can relate to this if you'll hear me on it. There are fewer attacks that hurt more than when somebody perverts your obedience and pictures it as a venture of selfish gain. There's fewer things that hurt more than that. Is whenever you have put yourself completely out there to being obedient to God and to being the very best you possibly be, and then people accuse you of something completely false. It'll destroy you. It'll make it where you don't even want to try anymore. But here's where I'm so thankful about Nehemiah. He was of such sound mind that he was ready to expose the truth. He actually openly accused Sanballat of making it up. So how do we do that, though? How do we remain of sound mind? Well, there's only one way that I've learned, is you got to continually be in this book. And you don't just need to continually be in it reading it. You need to continually be in it being sanctified by it. And sanctified means being the process of being made holy. Transformation. 1 Peter 5:8 says that we need to be alert and of sound mind because the devil walks around like a roaring lion. John 17:17 says that, Lord, sanctify me by your truth. Your word is truth. Ephesians 5 says that whenever we see darkness, we need to expose it to the light. Looking at verse 9, look at Nehemiah's response. Then I said to him, saying, no such things that you say have been done, for you are inventing them out of your own mind. Go to the next one. For they all wanted to frighten us, thinking their hands will drop from the work, and it will not be done. But look at this last line. Look at Nehemiah's response. But now, O God, strengthen my hands. Sanballat wanted to attack the strength of their unity. So you know what Nehemiah did? He prayed to the giver of strength. You want to hit me? I'm going to go get more strength. You want to hit us? I'm going to go get more strength. See, Nehemiah was able to do this because he fully knew God's ability, and he also knew his own inability. You need to hear me on that this morning. We must strive to be like Nehemiah. Nehemiah knew God's ability, and he also knew his own inability. You need to start recognizing and confessing it for what it is. See, we could learn so much from his leadership. Confessing our inability into faith in his. I put in my notes right here is that, simply put, way too often, prayer fails because our immature faith gave up too soon. We could have been on track. We could have had the very right prayer. We could have been praying for exactly what God wanted us to pray for. We could have had the details. We could have had the devotion. But then we get tired of waiting. And our immature faith says, well, let's go find another answer. Because God hasn't answered yet. As a church, we've been praying for a building. We've been praying for these things. And nothing's happened yet. I'm going to tell you right now, just fun fact, church planting is the hardest ministry there is. Because we are a group that comes together and we're mobile. If anything, we should be the stronger of anything, because that's what the church was originally, is mobile. But it's so hard. Church planting is so hard because we don't have anything that's really ours. We're in here, we're setting up, we're taking down, and you're not able to be at a church where you can kind of just slide in and slide out and not be seen. Jessica, love you very much. You can't slide in and slide out here as a meet and greet. Because we mean it when we say you're family. But how many prayers have failed because of our immature faith? See, faith is the end of us. And if it's the end of us, of course it requires vulnerability. But what do we not want? We will not let ourselves be seen as vulnerable. So in essence, prayers are never answered because we're never willing to put it on the line for God to do it. So deliverance remains delayed because we stop believing. So then there was the lure and the trap of safety, verses 10 through 14. Let's read those all the way through. It says, when I went into the house of Shemaiah, the son of Delaiah, son of Mehidbol, maybe that was right, who was confined to his home, he said, let us meet together in the house of God within the temple. Let us close the doors of the temple, for they are coming to kill you. And they're coming to kill you by night. But I said, should such a man as I run away, and what man such as I could go into the temple and live, I will not go in. And I understood and saw that God had not sent him, but he had pronounced the prophecy against me. Pay attention to this next part. Because Tobiah and Sanballat had hired him. Lures of safety. Danger was circling. Fear was spreading. Fear, it tests the very strength and the resolve of our faith. Shemaiah responded as 99% of people would when you're in this sort of a situation. Run and hide. I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to be honest with you. Last September, a year ago, I was coming into a time where I really had what I felt like was a big vision, a big direction of where we're supposed to go as a church. And some things happened along the way, and it just crushed me. And I did what Shemaiah said to do here. As I went and I hid. But I got to tell you, I've come out of hiding. And Shemaiah, his recommendation was, hey, why don't you hide in a place that's sacred so nobody will go there? You guys all know you got that place. You got that place where you'll hide, where you know nobody's going to come in. And we do that so often. We fold. And the reason why is because, like, as much as I believed in what God was calling me to do, I wasn't committed to it. I wasn't committed to it the way I thought that I was. And it kind of brought me to a thing of, like, we want to go run and hide. You guys remember the game of tag? And if you played tag with me and my friends, we always had a home base. Okay, you got a home base so that nobody can tag you. Okay, and sometimes that home base was a person, sometimes that home base was a tree. I mean, if you were petty enough, and if you're my kids enough, it's a pebble on the ground. This is home base. You can't touch me. You can't even see the rock. But this is home base. See, it was safety. The threat that Nehemiah was facing, it was real. And this advice was run for safety. Nehemiah had a decision to make. We have a decision to make. We can either hide in fear or we can serve with purpose. You can either hide in fear or you can serve in purpose. So verses 13, come on, 11 through 13. Here's the reasons why he declined. Nehemiah declined, very one, because of his role. Leaders don't run and hide. Leaders face adversity. Number two, Shemaiah's suggestion. You need to hear this part. Shemaiah's suggestion for him to hide in the temple would have required Nehemiah to sin, because only the priests were allowed in that part of the temple. So for Nehemiah to be safe, he had to sin. God will never call you to sin and search for safety. He will never call us to sin as a church and search for safety. Shemaiah was a mole. He was hired by Tobiah. He knew that if Nehemiah went into the temple, it would have disqualified him to lead, because it would have put him at odds with the priesthood. As a church, we need to be very careful of what we're encouraging one another to do, because we don't need to disqualify ourselves from the ministry God's called us to lead, the mission. So why should we, as believers in a church, decline to run and hide? Number one, because you have a role and a purpose in this church family. All of you do. Andy, even this morning, whenever you weren't here as early as you usually are, the questions were immediately asked: where is Andy? Where's John? Where's Olivia? Where's Ethan? We have a role here, and her role is not outreach. Her role's not coffee. Her role is that she's our sister in Christ, and we are so much better when she's here than we are when she's not, whenever they're not here. John's out working this morning, so if you have John's number, let him know how much you missed him today. But whenever we're looking at this, we need to understand we have a role and a purpose. And then looking back to Nehemiah, write this down. Really. Stitch this one on a pillow. Sin is never the answer. You don't know how you can decline? You want to know how you can be the leader you need to be? Sin is never the answer. Disqualifying ourselves will not fulfill the purpose God has called our church to. Disqualifying ourselves will not fulfill the purpose that God's called us to. So last but not least, verse 14. Caleb, if you would bring that up. Remember Tobiah and Sanballat, oh my God, according to these things that they did, and also the prophetess Noadiah and the rest of the prophets who wanted to make me afraid. Is that it? Okay. Safety was not in the temple. Safety was in the Lord. That's what Nehemiah knew. Our safety is not going to be in our services. Our safety is not going to be in any kind of a covenant that we have with each other. Our safety is going to be in this. In the Holy Spirit together. See, Nehemiah, he opted to trust in the Lord. What have you opted to do with the things that are going on in your life? What have you opted to do? Nehemiah, this is where we all struggle. Nehemiah left vengeance up to the Lord. If vengeance is God's, our purpose is heartfelt obedience. This is a unifying thing. We don't have to seek vengeance for anything. Nehemiah knew that Shemaiah was one of many conspirators. So the question is for us, is like, what awareness do we have about the dangers that are around us as believers and the dangers that are around us as a church? They're going to try to stop us from our purpose. And then last but not least is, hostile environments, they're inevitable and they're certain. But our faithfulness and our righteous response, that's conditional. I'm going to repeat that one for you. Hostile environments are inevitable and they're certain. But your faithfulness and your righteous response, that is conditional. It's a choice. Where are you at with your traps today? Have you been seeking peace in places that you shouldn't be seeking peace? Are you opening yourself up and letting your guard down, trying to find your way through life or through these situations? Are you at a place where feel like you're receiving threats from the enemy? And it's making you really test about where you are? Your response needs to be exactly what Nehemiah's was. If they test our strength, let's go to the strength giver. Would you pray with me this morning? Prayer team, those of you guys who